China's National People's Congress has kicked off with Premier Li Qiang outlining measures to get the world's #2 economy back on track and setting a growth target of around 5% for the year. Hello and welcome to Asia Business Report. I'm Steve Lai. Now, we begin in Beijing, where China's National People's Congress has begun. The annual session of Parliament sets the political agenda for the year. China's official work report states the country is targeting growth of around 5%. Last year, the economy grew by 5.2%. Premier Li Qiang is now speaking. Let's listen in.
Invigorating China's science and education and consolidating the foundation for high-quality development. We will develop a high-quality educational system, fully implement the party's educational policy, and regard high-quality development as the lifeblood of education at various types of lower levels, and also strengthen fundamental education and improve its quality. We will launch an initiative to upgrade basic education and accelerate high-quality, well-balanced development of urban-rural integration and compulsory education. We will enhance public interest preschool education and pilot comprehensive higher education reform.
Li Qiang there talking about education and the need to develop it for a modern economy. We'll get thoughts of our business reporter Katie Silva on that in just a bit. But first, Katie, let's come back to that big sort of headline figure that's come out where they've stated, or Li Qiang has stated, that the target for GDP for 2024 is 5%.
That's right. So that was all emerged just in the last 5 or so minutes, Steve. And many analysts were wondering whether or not they were going to be able to back up that figure, 5.2% of course in 2023, and whether or not, given it's coming off now a relatively higher base, whether or not they were going to be able to achieve this. So around 5% does seem to be hedging their bet somewhat. China's economy, of course, has been facing a number of challenges, and he hasn't shied away from those in his speech either. He mentioned, for example, the geopolitical risks, the challenges, particularly when it comes to Washington. But also, really what we're seeing in this speech so far is it does seem to be something of a morale booster, trying to get the troops to go out and spend. And of course, one of the biggest challenges facing China's economy at the moment has been consumption and encouraging confidence in the consumer to go out and spend. So there are a couple of lines. He said, for example, that there was favourable conditions outweigh the unfavourable ones, and that China will surge ahead towards a great future. He's also spent a lot of the speech lauding the past achievements of the past year, talking about things like science and technology, progress when it comes to the environment, even, for example, lauding the Comac airliner taking to the skies domestically. So that has been a big focus of his speech, trying to rebuild confidence.
And we did hear him speaking just before we came to you, Katie, talking about the need for education development, moving into the high-tech sector. Why is that so important to China's economy?
Well, they really see it as a very important element of growth. Now, of course, one of the big issues for China too is it has been somewhat phased out of the international technology sphere. We've seen, for example, of course, the US restricting chip exports to China, and that, of course, hampers a country's economic development. So they want to grow their tech sector. As I say, they lauded a lot of the achievements of the past year when it comes to tech innovation. They see it, of course, as their ticket to the future, really, when it comes to that. Another couple of headlines that we're seeing, we're expecting, for example, defence spending to be announced in the order, according to Reuters and Bloomberg, in the order of about 7%. That's more, as I say, than that 5% GDP target. So we're waiting for that announcement as well. But yeah, plenty still to watch.
Yeah, thanks very much, AK. We'll leave it there for now. Thanks for that analysis. Kate's over there speaking to us from our newsroom here in Singapore. Now, US business leaders are also paying close attention to what Chinese officials have to say, as geopolitical tensions have eroded confidence for many American companies that rely on doing business there. Here's what Eric Zheng, president of the American Chamber of Commerce, had to say about investment ties between Washington and Beijing.
In the past, the Chinese government tended to focus more on the supply side by investing in infrastructure. And I think at this point, there is a lack of confidence, consumer confidence. So how do we get the consumers start spending? That's a big challenge for now. We see bank deposits going up while spending going down. In the So I think the government does have a toolbox to apply to stimulate the growth by focusing on the consumer side. And I think there are talks about a program to support households in terms of replacing some major ticket items like home appliance, then automobile purchases, replacing the existing ones. So I think that will be a focus. That should be a focus for the government to stimulate consumption rather than just simply focusing on investing in infrastructure.
Now, I understand you've said in the past that US-China relations are better than in previous years. So how can sort of the political space impact the economic space?
Well, geopolitical tension has been a concern for foreign investors in China, including American companies. Many of those are members. And because of the uncertainty, right? Because companies look for predictability. So since last year, I think the two sides of the governments have tried to stabilize the bilateral relationship with very high-level talks between the two governments, and that's a good sign. And hopefully, the newly established channels of communications between the two governments will continue, and U.S. business will, certainly provide our support. And I think overall, we are hopeful that the bilateral relationship will remain stable so that we can pursue business opportunities in China for the long term.
In other news, Elon Musk made headlines for suing OpenAI and its CEO Sam Altman last week. But this week, he's facing a lawsuit of his own. For more, Erin Delmore filed this report in New York.
Elon Musk is being accused of unfairly depriving 4 top Twitter executives out of their severance. The former execs say Mr. Musk owes them more than $128 million collectively, and they're suing. Here's the discrepancy. Mr. Musk said at the time that he fired them for cause, and therefore he didn't need to pay them severance. But the former executives say that's not true. They've been on the forefront of efforts to make Mr. Musk follow through on his acquisition of Twitter after he offered and then backed away. The group includes Twitter's former chief executive, the company's former chief financial officer, the former chief legal officer, and the former general counsel. The lawsuit was filed in federal court in California on Monday.
Now, there are more than 25 safe and effective vaccines to prevent disease, but millions still die every year because the vaccines don't get to the people who need them. One company has been looking at ways to streamline the process. My colleague Lara Lewington from BBC's Click went along to find out.
Chikungunya is one of the infections that's spread by mosquitoes. It's usually confined to sub-Saharan Africa, but has started to spread. One vaccine has just been approved by the Food and Drug Administration in the US, but others are working on it too. One of them is the Bristol-based startup in Moferon. It's developed a new synthetic protein called adoma. The protein is adorned with parts of the target virus, but it's not infectious itself. It's a different approach to how other vaccines, like the COVID-19 ones, were made, but there's one big advantage.
The adoma can be produced, stored, transported, and brought to the people at ambient temperatures, which can go up to 50 degrees. This is a big advantage to other vaccines, which depend on a functioning cold chain.
Millions of doses of vaccines are lost every year because of inadequate refrigeration, especially when being sent to developing countries.
Part of the issue is transporting the vaccine from the distribution depot, where it is kept in cold chain conditions, to the site where it's going to be administered. It could be hundreds of miles. And then when they get to the facilities where they're going to deploy the vaccine, more often than not, there's not any refrigeration.
Another big advantage of the technique being used here is that it could be synthesized to target more than one disease in one shot.
So when we put it then into the cryo-electron microscope, the electron beam can go through it, and we will see our vaccine particles.
The microscope can zoom in to 0.1 nanometer detail. That's 1/10 millionth of a millimeter. These raw images may not look like much to you or me, but they are a vital part of the process. If they do succeed, the possibilities in other areas could be huge too, such as cancer vaccines that train the body's immune system to make antibodies against a tumour. This is a small company, though, up against a big challenge and big pharma. And these vaccines aren't in humans yet, so there's a way to go.
Now, before we go, a reminder that China's National People's Congress is currently underway. There is President Xi Jinping, and we are listening to Li Qiang talk about China's prospects for the year ahead. We'll have more in the next edition of Asia Business Report.
Take Me to the Opera, in association with Rolex and its Perpetual Arts Initiative.
New Zealand soprano Dame Kiritikanawa has enjoyed one of the longest careers in operatic history.
It was nothing other than a joy to sing. I enjoyed every minute.
She has that magic suite of tools, real intelligence, a long view, good technical training.
A favourite of the British royal family, she became a household name when she sang at the wedding of Prince Charles and Lady Diana. Now Dame Kiri tells us she's devoting her time to helping a younger generation of singers.
She's incredibly generous with her feedback and with her time. And she started a whole generation to make this career.
We mark Kiritikanawa's legacy at 80.
It's a movement made of tension and release, inspiration and solace, a call and a response. From minor to major, one voice, then another, then a dozen or more. Soothing, moving, empowering. As profound as our memories, and as bright as our hopes. A flow, a pace, an endless fight. The final piece before daylight. Crafted by inspiration, perpetuated by passion, it keeps resonating with every generation. As vital as breathing, as essential as moving. It is, in many ways, the purest expression of life itself.
The Pera is also home to work by a fascinating artist, long considered a Turkish Orientalist, Osman Hamdi Bey. His masterpiece is the Tortoise Trainer. But before we look at it, Barish wants to show me something that brings the world depicted within the painting to life.
So what have you got here?
This is a VR headset.
So I'm becoming Osman Hamdi Bey for the day.
Kind of. You visit his studio. You just put it on.
Carefully put it on like that.
Oh, here are my hands. Okay, that's really quite weird. This is amazing. So this is his studio. It's wonderful seeing the actual room. Oh, here's the painting, right. Ah. I'm inside. I can hear some birds. There's a tortoise. Oh, look. Pick up the lettuce leaf and then you can eat it. And at this high point in my career as an art critic, I think maybe I should come back into the real world.
I'm telling you, there's going to be a revolution. Have you considered resigning over this? Because you're clearly embarrassed.
Of course, I have been. I have thought about this. I want to be totally honest with you, and I am being honest with you.
At least this should be a common ground for everyone. We should respect international law.
In the spirit of your title of Hard Talk, you're completely wrong.
Not offended, but I want to hear
You're
why.
completely wrong.
Hard Talk on BBC News.
This is BBC News with the latest news and results from around the globe in Sports Day.
time to Sports Day. I'm Sarah Martin. Coming up on the programme, a goal fest for the Gunners. They hit 6 against Sheffield United to keep pace in the Premier League title race. A big miss for jump racing's biggest festival as Constitution Hill is ruled out at Cheltenham. And plans begin to bring the World Athletics Championships back to the UK in 2029. You're very welcome along to the programme wherever you are watching around the world. Well, Arsenal have kept up the pressure in this season's title race in the Premier League. The Gunners hammered bottom side Sheffield United 6-0 to move 2 points behind leaders Liverpool. And Arsenal became the first English league side to win 3 away games in a row by a margin of 5 or more goals. Captain Martin Odegaard opened the scoring just 5 minutes into the game. A Jadon Bogle own goal, along with scores from Gabriel Martinelli, Kai Havertz and Declan Rice, had many of the home fans leaving early at Bramall Lane. Ben White then rounded things off after the break as the Blades improved a little in the second half. So Mikel Arteta's side are third, but Sheffield United remain rock bottom, 11 points from safety with 11 games to go.
That was a great performance, a big result for us again with the amount of goals that we scored and the clean sheet and the fact that the team shows signs of wanting more and being in a good moment. So very positive. We just hope that we can be better and we can earn more points than we did last season. We have some players back as well, the likes of Thomas and Fabio, and that's great news. So let's give it a go.
You know, that might be a way forward for us now to play the young boys. I'm a bit disappointed in a few of the boys' performances as well. I think some of them can do better, but obviously I'll take that overall responsibility of trying to get it right. And you know, with Toy we've gone 5-4, we fought 5-4-5. Bodies in the middle of the park, you know, making sure that we clogged that area up, but we didn't, and unfortunately the result is what the result, and we have to live with it.
Chelsea striker Sam Kerr is set to face trial in the UK after being charged with racially aggravated harassment of a police officer. The Australia international pleaded not guilty to the offence at a court hearing on Monday, the Crown Prosecution Service have said. It follows an alleged incident in January 2023. Kerr is scheduled to appear in court on the 1st of February next year. She's currently sidelined with an ACL injury. Staying with football, and the Republic of Ireland interim boss John O'Shea was speaking for the first time on Monday. The former Manchester United defender played 118 times for the Republic and was an assistant coach under previous manager Stephen Kenny. He's taking charge for the friendlies against Belgium and Switzerland later this month. But what about the permanent role?
Look, let's hope that takes care of itself. But ultimately for me, I'm focused on these 2 games. And then we'll see what happens then. At the minute, obviously, I've been given the chance to lead the team for the 2 games against Belgium and Switzerland. Going forward, who knows? It's obviously spoken to Mark about this before in terms of when management changes or things happen, everyone has their own ideas, head coaches have their own ideas, etc. And as always, I would always be up for a conversation, but that's for stuff for further down the line.
The president of Motorsport's world governing body, the FIA, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, is under investigation for allegedly interfering in a Formula One race result. The whistleblower has told the FIA that Ben Sulayem allegedly intervened to overturn a penalty given to Aston Martin Fernando Alonso at last year's Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. The claim is in a report by an FIA compliance officer to its ethics committee, which has been seen by BBC Sport. Ben Sulayem and the FIA have not responded to requests for comment, and the Ethics Committee is expected to take 4 to 6 weeks to issue its report. Jason Kelsey has announced his retirement from the NFL after 13 years. He is regarded as one of the league's best ever centres. He is now 36, and he cried as he began a statement lasting more than 40 minutes and then continued to hold back tears. Kelsey spent his entire career with the Philadelphia Eagles, helping them win their first Super Bowl in 2018 and reach the showpiece event again in 2023 when he faced his brother Travis. Now we're just a week away from the highlight of the jump racing season, the Cheltenham Festival, but it will be missing one of its stars. Constitution Hill will not defend the champion hurdle on the opening day. His trainer Nicky Henderson says he's failed to recover sufficiently from a respiratory infection, so won't be ready to run. Lizzie Greenwood Hughes has more for us.
We've known for weeks that Constitution Hill was a serious doubt for the champion hurdle. Now, this isn't any old horse. This is the best hurdler in the world, possibly the best racehorse ever in the world, if we could just see him a little bit more often to see just how good he could be. But he won last year's race by 9 lengths. And he was one of the very few bankers for British-trained horses for the Cheltenham Festival, because we're expecting Irish-trained domination of the festival. But Nicky Henderson said time has just run out. The horse is much brighter, actually, this morning, so there is good news. And it's nothing serious, but welfare obviously is the greatest concern amongst racehorse owners and trainers. And they said he's not going to be ready for what Nicky Henderson called the Olympic Games, and that's what the Cheltenham Festival is. So it could be a more interesting race. State Man from Willie Mullins Island base is now the favourite. And what it means for Constitution Hill, he now has another month. Hopefully he'll be ready for the Aintree Hurdle, which is a race he won easily last year, and that's at the Grand National meeting at Aintree. So that's what he'll be up to next, hopefully, fingers crossed, but he's not going to be in the champion hurdle.
UK Sport and UK Athletics are planning to bid to host the 2029 World Championships. Would be another big coup for the UK, with Glasgow staging the World Indoor Championships over the weekend, and with the European Championships heading to Birmingham in 2 years' time. London and the UK last staged the event back in 2017. A feasibility study has yet to take place, but the sports leaders say they are determined to host what they describe as a transformational major championships. The ambition forms part of a wider set of hosting aspirations set to be announced by the funding agency UK Sport on Tuesday.
We can't definitely say it'd be London, but it would actually be in our mind, given the success of it before. I think London was kind of transformational, and it built up 2012. It was transformational in all sorts of ways for the sport, the sport back in Europe, and it was also transformational for the athletes. And you look at some of the athletes coming through here and where they come from, and I just think it would be another step up for us.
Yeah, I think it's just important for Britain to have athletics meets, because it inspires generations of athletes to come through and you know that there's athletes that are from where they're from going after massive medals in front of home crowds. So yeah, I think makes a huge difference to grassroots athletics especially, and it helps with coaching and allowing people to get an insight into our lives and that next stepping stone from where some athletes are now.
Well, Sally Gunnell won Olympic 400-metre hurdle gold in 1992 for Great Britain, and speaking to the BBC earlier, she was excited about Team GB's chances ahead of the Paris Olympics. But first she began with her thoughts on the UK hosting another major championships.
It's incredible to think that that could happen, especially after you've looked back and you've seen the success of the Olympics that we had in 2012, a World Championship. And we're filling stadiums. The London Grand Prix that's happening this summer is nearly sold out. So we're a nation that absolutely loves it. You heard the roar this weekend for a World Indoors. And I think we know we can deliver a world-class championship, and we can fill that stadium every night. And it would be just amazing to have a World Championship back in London. The Olympics is like no other competition. It's only every 4 years. It brings up new names, new talent. And I think what's quite nice is that we are seeing new names and new talent in the Great Britain team coming through. And you just want to be able to build on that confidence. So who knows? We've got a whole array of athletes that are out there that haven't competed indoors, like Katrina Johnson-Thompson, winning that Worlds last year, the confidence that will give her going in. She's so hungry for that Olympic medal. We've got Keeley as well, Hodgkinson in the 800, so talented, still young. So we've still got that depth of Donnell Hughes, we've got Ben Patterson that got that bronze in the world. So, we're talking about quite a number of depth of athletes here that have got that quality, they've got that hunger, and who could perform in Paris.
Now, finally, the official posters for the Paris 2024 Olympic and Paralympic Games have been revealed, and they're inspired by the Surrealist art movement. They highlight the capital's
Historic monuments, including the Eiffel Tower and the Arc de Triomphe, as well as the venues to be used, such as the Stade de France, Marseille Marina, and the surfing site in Tahiti, designed by Parisian artist Ugo Gattani. The pieces complement each other to form a double poster, and he's paying tribute to the Surrealist Manifesto, which was published 100 years ago, the last time the Games were held in the county capital. Well, just a reminder of our top story before we go. Arsenal hammer Sheffield United 6-0 in the Premier League to keep the pressure on in the title race. There's lots more on that on the BBC Sports website and app. But for me and the team, see you again soon.
Stories of success, stories of failure, stories of strength, stories of corruption, stories of hope, stories of despair, stories of optimism, resilience, achievement, triumph. Remarkable stories from different places around the world. Join us for a series of stunning award-winning documentaries. Why Stories on BBC News.
Hello there, welcome to your look at what's happening weather-wise around the world over the next few days. We're going to start in North America. Lots of snowfall, stormy conditions across California recently. Not a batch of rain and mountain snow into the north on Tuesday. Colder air to the north of that than we normally expect this time of year. Central eastern Canada, though, temperatures well above normal and very stormy conditions towards the southeast with the risk of some pretty severe thunderstorms. Rain spreading its way northwards and eastwards over the next few days. Doesn't mean it's quiet at the moment through much of Central America, the Caribbean. There's a few showers dotted around. Inland ones will develop in Cuba through Tuesday afternoon, and towards the southeast, a great chance of 1 or 2 showers here. Now, the stormiest weather in South America on Tuesday extends from southern Brazil through Paraguay towards Peru. It's here we're going to see the highest rainfall totals, some big impacts. The showers also developing again a bit more widely to the Amazonian basin. Further south, it stays largely dry. A drier day through the western half of the Med on Tuesday, but around alpine regions, we're going to see the risk of some more snow as the next low pressure system develops. Plenty of cloud and outbreaks of rain coming going through France, and lots of cloud in towards Germany as well. But southeast Europe receives some of the biggest of the storms, parts of Greece and western Turkey. Now, we've got some very windy, wet conditions at the moment in South Africa. The windiest conditions transfer to the Eastern Cape on Tuesday. Drier, though, for many. Stormy conditions across parts of Madagascar and lots of showers just through the sort of equatorial regions as we go through the day. We're going to see outbreaks of rain to the north of the Levant, a few showers around Mediterranean coast. Turkey, lots of rain and hill snow. Dry through much of the Middle East. Most of the storms have cleared. Could still see 1 or 2 in Oman. Extends into another area of rain and mountain snow across Afghanistan. Temperatures through Central Asia pretty cold. Much of India, Pakistan, though, will be dry. Take a look now into parts of Eastern Asia, and after a wet and windy day with some snow in northern Honshu, Japan looking a little bit dry, still plenty of cloud around, but not as much rain to come. Cooler conditions through Korea into the northern half of China, but Philippines to Thailand, drier than we normally expect this time of year. Indonesia, much more in the way of storms, not just on Wednesday, but through much of this coming week. It's a bit wetter than normal to Northern Territory on Wednesday with some severe storms around. Heat set to build Adelaide, Melbourne over the next few days, but dry here. Just a small chance of a shower in Sydney. New Zealand, it's quieter weather at the moment, but very much cooler over the next few days.
The future is already here.
All about AI changing our jobs.
From gadgets to gaming.
May the best driver win. It will be sustainability to AI.
Giant nets and AI robots to deal with plastic pollution.
The latest developments from the world of tech. A floating solar farm, and it's a pretty impressive sight.
Wow! That went right through me!
Click on BBC News.
Live from Washington, this is BBC News. Israeli opposition figure Benny Gantz meets Vice President Kamala Harris as pressure from Washington for a ceasefire deal continues to grow. Haiti is under a state of emergency after a massive prison breakout as gang members demand the prime minister resign. Plus, the U.S. Supreme Court rules Donald Trump can remain on primary ballots, handing a major legal victory to the former president. Hello, I'm Carl Massman. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris expressed deep concerns over the humanitarian situation in Gaza during talks with Benny Gantz, a key Israeli opposition figure and a member of the Israeli War Cabinet. The White House said Ms. Harris urged Israel to take additional measures to increase aid flow to Gaza and called for a, quote, credible humanitarian plan before any major military operations in Rafah. Mr. Gantz's visit has been criticized by some in Benjamin Netanyahu's government, who've said that as an opposition figure, any comments he might make would not be binding. The meeting comes as a new round of talks are underway in Cairo on a deal that would pause fighting and release Israeli hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. Our correspondent, Vera Davis, has the latest now from Jerusalem.
The one positive note from these peace talks in Cairo was that they went into a second day with delegations from Hamas, Egypt, Qatar, and of course the Americans talking about the possibility of a 6 or 7 week ceasefire in Gaza. But of course, Israel decided not to send a delegation. Israel saying that those preconditions it had insisted upon, that Hamas should provide a list of the hostages who remain alive and those who might be exchanged in a prisoner swap or a hostage swap with the Palestinians, that wasn't forthcoming. So Israel has decided not to send a delegation to Cairo. That has been criticized in many parts of the Israeli media and in the Israeli public as an unsustainable position. That's not to say, of course, that had Israel gone to Cairo, that there would have been an automatic ceasefire agreement. There remain other stumbling blocks. Hamas, for example, wants Israeli troops to be withdrawn from populated areas of Gaza and for Gazan citizens, for Palestinians, to be allowed to return to their home areas in northern Gaza. And those are significant issues that Israel might have objected to. Meanwhile, the humanitarian situation in Gaza is said to be increasingly dire. The Israeli attacks on positions, Hamas and other positions in Gaza continue, and people continue to die. According to the Hamas-run health ministry, now well over 30,000 people have been killed in Gaza, most of those, or many of those, women and children. And according to the UN and other aid agencies, the humanitarian situation, particularly in northern parts of Gaza, is increasingly dire, with some people facing starvation, with a lack of food, lack of basic medicine. The Americans, the British and other international countries and agencies are putting increasing pressure on Israel and Hamas to agree this ceasefire and for more aid to be allowed in.
Meanwhile, in Gaza, Israel and Hamas continue to exchange attacks. The Washington Health Ministry says more than 30,000 Palestinians were killed since October. Although the BBC is certainly able to report from inside Gaza, our special correspondent Fergal Kane sent us this update from Jerusalem, and just a warning, his report contains some distressing images.
A grief so calamitous, it is death to the rumors of peace. This is the 150th day of war. And each day, the images of the grieving and of the dead are beamed to the world. Ian Mulgarrett was sheltering with 45 family members when a rocket struck. 7 were killed, including 2 children. A ceasefire might save the living. It won't bring back the dead. Noah Sarey has lived and worked among the dead since the war began. He is a shroud. children are World War II. The living world she holds in her arms. Frederick Keane, BBC News, Jerusalem.
Joining me now to discuss ongoing talks in both the U.S. and the Middle East is former U.S. Representative Jane Harman. She's also the chair of the Bipartisan National Defense Strategy Commission. Thank you for being here. I just want to start by asking about that meeting today with U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris and Benny Gantz. What do you make of it, and how much influence do you think as the Vice President can have now on Israeli policy?
Well, I think the meeting is quite significant. The fact that he came to the U.S. was welcomed by the Biden administration at the second most senior level. There's no way she would have taken that meeting without the blessing of the president. He is in the war cabinet, but he also was the prime minister of Israel and is looked to as someone who might succeed Bibi Netanyahu or their new elections. So I think on the face of it, it was a big deal. And the fact that she is out there on the airwaves calling for a pause in fighting, not a permanent ceasefire, but at least a temporary ceasefire, speaks directly to me that the U.S. strategy is to put a lot of pressure on the Israeli government, I think properly, to do this. But there are some other issues. I'm sure you're going to ask me about them, and I think Israel has some equities here.
It was interesting to see, wasn't it? This was a speech on Sunday from the Vice President. She was actually in Alabama. Very forceful words. She called for an immediate ceasefire. She also said, and I'm quoting here, the Israeli government must do more to significantly increase the flow of aid. No excuses. What do you make of that kind of language coming from the Vice President? Does it seem to you that they are really ramping up the pressure now on Israel?
I think they've been doing that for a while, and I think it's the right strategy. But I do want to make a point that Israel's request that the list of hostages who are still alive and the list of those who would be released and some specific terms about how many Palestinian prisoners have to be released in exchange for one Israeli hostage are reasonable requests, and they haven't been satisfied. So that's one point. The other point, though, is these airdrops, I think, are a good thing. Thanks to Jordan for helping with that. Thanks to Egypt for helping and hosting some of the negotiations. The neighbors are now getting more involved, and as I hear it, they and the U.S. are speaking with one voice about the need to reduce the impact on innocent civilians in Gaza. But I would also say Israel's demands at this point seem to me to be quite reasonable.
Let's talk about those airdrops. There has been some criticism about airdrops themselves, that it's not a very efficient way of getting aid into a zone or a territory that needs it. Is the U.S. doing enough? We saw in that report just a dire humanitarian situation. We heard from the World Health Organization today saying that children in the north of Gaza are starving to death.
Is there enough being done? No. Is the U.S. doing more? Yes. With the neighbors, should there be more trucks coming in through Rafah? I think so. But again, they have to be inspected for weapons. This would not be a good look if Hamas were able to regroup and continue attacks. Let's understand, an international investigation today just proved that there were not only rapes and mutilation, but gang rapes of the Israelis during October 7th, the October 7th brutal attack by Hamas. So there are equities on the other side. What would I like? I would like there to be a temporary ceasefire, an exchange, full return of the hostages, and then concrete work on the governance of Gaza, plus the path to a two-state solution. I have said repeatedly that that's the only way that Israel's security will be truly guaranteed, and that the Palestinian dream of a homeland, which is a correct dream under the right circumstances, will be honored.
You are a longtime Democratic Congresswoman. I want to ask you about President Biden. The issue of Gaza has been hanging over his head, especially from the left. There's increasing pressure now for a ceasefire. Is a ceasefire, do you think, now a political necessity for the president?
Well, I think there's a lot of pressure on the president, but I also think the U.S. position over decades since the U.S. was the first country to recognize Israel, is to support the country of Israel. And I think you can do both at the same time, and the president's trying to do it. The pressure is intense. The Michigan vote the other day shows how many people are upset with this president. But it's early days. It's 8 months until the election, and I am very hopeful that there will be a short and longer term resolution of this problem well before the election. It will be a time for people to reassess what they think, for maybe some of the anger on both sides to calm down. And the good news would be if the hostages were returned, and at least those who are still surviving, I hope it's a lot of them, will be reunited with their families, including 6 U.S. hostages.
Those negotiations are something we will continue to watch very closely. Jane Harman, former U.S. representative and chair of the Bipartisan National Defense Strategy Commission. Thank you very much. Well, parts of Haiti are under a state of emergency, and a curfew has been imposed as gang violence risks spiraling out of control there. In the past few days, armed gangs have stormed Haiti's 2 largest prisons, freeing thousands of inmates. The UN says gangs control more than 80% of Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince, and they're now demanding the resignation of Prime Minister Ariel Henry. When the attacks began on Thursday, Mr. Henry was in Kenya. He was pushing for the deployment of a UN-backed police force. Gang violence is not a new problem in Haiti, but groups that once called each other enemies are now combining forces. With more, here's our correspondent, Will Grant.
As the hours pass in this state of emergency in the Haitian capital, so too does the uncertainty grow on the streets. Barricades have been erected around certain gang-controlled areas to stop the security forces encroaching on their territories. So too the police have set up checkpoints, and of course there's a nighttime curfew in place. And throughout it all, despite the fact that so many inmates managed to escape in the prison break over the weekend, still there's no clarity on the whereabouts of the Prime Minister Ariel Henry. All of that is adding to the stress of ordinary people who simply don't know when some semblance of normality will return to their communities. Schools remain closed. Businesses are shuttered. There is still sporadic looting taking place in some neighborhoods. Now, is there any kind of diplomatic or strategic way out of this? The White House have already talked about the importance of free and fair elections, saying that violence does nothing but upend people's lives. However, while that lofty talk is all well and good, the truth of the matter is the idea of free and fair elections is still a very, very long way away. The gangs do not want to see President Henry anywhere involved, either in Haitian politics or in any future election. And I think that they're taking this moment of a sort of breakdown in law and order, a political vacuum, if you like, in his absence, to try and exert their authority and make sure he doesn't come back.
Our correspondent Bill Grant there. Well, a little bit earlier, I spoke with Harold Isaac, an independent journalist on the ground in Haiti, to get the latest from Port-au-Prince. Harold, thank you for joining us. Parts of Haiti under a state of emergency. Gangs now control large parts of the capital city. Can you just describe for us what does life feel like right now in Haiti?
Well, a little bit suspended. I mean, since Thursday, folks expected the week to be disrupted, but now we're seeing a state of emergency along with a curfew that is in effect right now.
Do you feel safe there? Do people feel safe?
Well, it's a checkered reality. It's a checkered life. I mean, you have to figure out your commute, where you're going, how you're coming back. You always have to be on the lookout and try and stay put as much as possible. But in reality, either you are in a situation where you're exposed to the direct reality, or you may be at risk of being exposed to that reality.
We're hearing that gang leaders are calling for the Prime Minister Ariel Henry to stand down. How stable do you think his position is at the top of the government there in Haiti?
Well, his situation certainly is complicated. I mean, Haiti currently is facing both an institutional crisis and a constitutional crisis that have been aggravated since the death by assassination of President Jovenel Moïse in July 2021. Mr. Henry was tapped 2 days before the death of the president, and has essentially inherited of the situation, which he had promised that he would essentially deliver on elections and retire, but that did not happen.
Why is that? Because we've been hearing that these elections have been delayed. I know that there is some worry that this could be an attempt to hold on to power, but on the other hand, this doesn't exactly seem like a perfect environment to hold elections in Haiti.
Well, this is part one of the big question marks. One of the big issues is essentially that the prime minister himself, in his current standing, would have two entities that could fire him, which is either the president or the parliament, which both are gone now. There is no president, and the parliament's terms have expired years ago. So essentially, he's caught in this sort of suspended situation, and he basically plays on that and the security situation to say, well, I'm unable to deliver on elections right now, but as soon as the security situation is restored, then I'll be able to have elections and hand over power.
A few days ago, Haiti finalized this security deal with Kenya that would send several hundred, up to 1,000 police officers to try to bolster the security situation there. What's the feeling on the ground? How confident are people that this plan might be able to start to get things under control?
Well, the Haitian government had requested formally from the international community troops or police officers, specialized units to come in Haiti since October of 2022. So ever since, people have been kind of expecting something to happen, and we're trying to cling on to whatever hope they could find. However, Haiti has been caught in this process ever since of international process to go and gather support, funding, and the units that would be coming to Haiti. And this is as part of this process that Ariel Henry traveled to Kenya last week to try and to sign an agreement with the Kenyan authorities to have Kenyan troops, Kenyan police officers being deployed in Haiti.
There seems to be a lot of power being consolidated by one gang leader, Jimmy Cherizier. His nickname is Barbecue. What more can you tell us about him and what he's up to?
Well, essentially, Jimmy Cherizier Barbecue is a former police officer turned notorious gang leader, and has essentially been a staple in the gang kind of environment for the last few years. Last time that he made the headlines was in 2022, precisely in September and October, where the country essentially grinded to a halt when he blocked access to the main oil terminal of the country for nearly 7 weeks. And essentially bringing back cholera, putting the economy on its knees, and ever since, now he claims, at least as of last week, that he has managed to unite all the rival gangs in the metropolitan area with one objective: to topple the current government.
Wow. Harold Isaac, independent journalist there in Haiti, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us.
Thanks for having me.
Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News.
The Financial Times has always stood out, not just for its striking pink colour, but for its journalism. Without fear and without favour is the phrase that set the FT's agenda from the day it launched. A promise to its readers to keep digging into every story, to move past the dead ends and the barriers, to keep delivering uncompromising, bold global reporting, so that you can navigate your world with confidence.
Hello, I'm Katya Adler. Over the years, I've travelled around the world covering some of the biggest news stories of our time. Now, I'm the host of The Global Story, a podcast bringing you fresh perspectives on one big news story each day of the week. Every episode, I sit with a smart and savvy BBC colleague talking about what's happening, why, and what it all means. That's The Global Story. Listen wherever you get your BBC podcasts.
Good
live with BBC News. The U.S. Supreme Court has unanimously rejected a Colorado ruling that would have removed former President Donald Trump from the state's primary ballot over his role in the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. The decision will also apply to other states with similar challenges to Mr. Trump's candidacy. Now, the ruling says individual states cannot bar candidates for the presidency under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment in the U.S. Constitution. That provision prohibits anyone who previously pledged to support the Constitution as an officer of the United States from returning to office if they betrayed their oath by engaging in insurrection. Section 3 does not specify who enforces it or when it should be invoked, but the Supreme Court's conservative majority said that Congress must act for it to take effect. Our North American correspondent Novia Iqbal was outside the Supreme Court with more.
This ruling by the Supreme Court isn't a huge surprise. In the oral arguments last month, all 9 justices across the ideological spectrum expressed skepticism at the way this post-Civil War amendment was being applied in this way. The Chief Justice, John Roberts, said that the whole point of this amendment was to restrict the power of states. So why would you therefore allow one state, in this case Colorado, have the power to kick a presidential candidate off the ballot? If they had upheld the ruling, many other states would have followed suit. There were other states looking to kick Donald Trump off the ballot. And then there were conservative states who said that, well, they would try and kick President Biden off the ballot, the primary ballot. So you would have seen this chaos in the run-up to the elections. So this is a big victory for Donald Trump, but it comes in a consequential week for him as far as his criminal trials go. We will find out at some point this week if his classified documents trial in Florida will go ahead and when it will go ahead. That's been delayed. As far as the Georgia election interference goes, we're also due to find out if the district attorney in that case, Fani Willis, will be disqualified. So this ruling has improved Donald Trump's legal problems, but his legal problems haven't gone away.
France has become the first country in the world to explicitly include the right to abortion in its constitution. France's National Assembly overwhelmingly voted 780 to 72 to enshrine women's, quote, guaranteed freedom to abort. France's President Emmanuel Macron said the move sends a universal message. Following the vote, the Eiffel Tower in Paris lit up in celebration with the message, my body, my choice. Our correspondent Hugh Schofield was there.
The reaction here at Trocadero, people will recognize where I am, Eiffel Tower behind me, was one of considerable elation and exhilaration. A cheer went up, the Eiffel Tower started sparkling with lights, which have been arranged, of course, by the socialist mayor of the Paris, Anne Hidalgo. People are happy because they see it as a very symbolic occasion. They see this as being a moment in which France has stood firm for women's rights, reproductive rights, which they say are at risk of erosion following the American decision 2 years ago to end the federal protection of abortion rights there. Now, some people would say in France, well, what does it matter that those similar threats to abortion rights in France? The people here would say, well, not now maybe, but perhaps in the future. And that's how this whole debate has been framed, the need to preserve the right inside the marvel of the Constitution, the right for women to be able to dispose of their reproductive rights as they see it. It was taken up by Macron, he put his weight behind it, and after that, the opposition, such as it was, has faded away. And really, there's pretty much unanimity behind this in the country. Even the right, the far right, voted in the majority in favour of the change. Some people will say, what difference does it make that abortion is here in France and there's no threat to it? But for militants, for activists here, nonetheless, a historic day, a symbolic day, and a day in which France can be what they say it should be, which is a light unto the nations, showing the way to feminists around the world that this can happen, in the hope that feminists in countries where abortion is under threat will look at what's happened in France and be heartened.
That's all for now. Stay with us for more right here on BBC.
Hello, if you're in Australia, New Zealand, quick forecast coming up in a short moment, but first to Eastern Asia. Easily to see where the dry conditions are at the moment. We've got this huge swathe of clear skies to the Philippines out towards Thailand. Very few in the way of storm clouds here, not just a moment, but over the next few days. Stormy weather to south through Indonesia, particularly stormy day and wet day on Tuesday across Japan, but by Wednesday, worst of that rain and the snow, of course, in northern Honshu clearing out towards the east. does leave plenty of cloud, but there'll be some brighter moments, especially towards some southern coast. A bit of cloud, but some sunny breaks in Seoul, cooler conditions in Beijing, Shanghai at the moment, but we've got temperatures in the mid-20s in Hong Kong, a little bit of rain at times in the southeast of China, and cooler than normal expect in Taiwan. Over the next few days, though, Tokyo will see something a bit bright continue to develop on Thursday, better sunshine later this weekend, sunny conditions developing in Seoul, but Hong Kong turning cooler and cloudier. Australia now and Northern Territory, a few more storms than normal expect this time of year over the next couple of days. It's dry largely towards the southeast, coming with like 1 or 2 isolated showers, New South Wales, towards Brisbane, Adelaide, Melbourne, already feeling hot. We'll feel hotter still as we go through the next couple of days. But the opposite said in New Zealand, we've got cooler conditions, southerly winds pushing in here. A lot of dry and bright weather on Wednesday, but we'll see some rain in the South Island as we go towards the end of the week. But Melbourne getting hotter, 37 degrees by Saturday.
This program asks plain questions with the help of the unrivaled range of BBC journalists right across the world and gathered here in this building. I'll also draw on my time reporting on global conflicts, frontline experience that helps me know who to talk to and who to listen to, meaning our analysis is unbiased with absolutely no spin.
Unspun World on BBC News. Between the 16th century BC and 12th century AD, the longest-lasting Andean civilization developed near Lake Titicaca, which is located in the Andes Mountains on the border of Bolivia and Peru. However, it disappeared suddenly and mysteriously.
Los restos arqueológicos de la cultura tiwanaku están expandidos en 4 países actuales. La más sostenida es una crisis ambiental que ha generado una sequía